the one constant. And this team is now 4-4. And you look ahead at their schedule: Carolina, Cleveland, Atlanta, now this weekend Tennessee team. Joe, here's the tough part of the
We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Week 9, trade targets, buy low, sell high, everything in between. Players that we should be higher on or lower on than our opponents, and how we can take advantage in fantasy football and DFS. A team that's very close to your heart, Sig, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it sounds like we're buying low on Chase Claypool, regardless of the quarterback situation. He's someone that, it's a decent opportunity to get him if you can.
It is, and I think that this is also a situation where you might even want to buy high on Deontay Johnson. And the reason is the Steelers had another signature 2021 Steelers win where they win ugly, they win with some timely plays, they overcome themselves. And look, this week on Monday night against Chicago, it sounds like another ugly game. Week 10 against Detroit, that could be like 30 carries for Najee Harris. But this is when it's going to get fun to have Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson on your team. Coming up after that, the Chargers, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Vikings, the Titans, who knows what that matchup's going to look like, and Kansas City. So most of those games sound like games to me where the Steelers aren't going to be able to go into a shell on offense. They're not going to be able to rely on their defense to do all the heavy lifting for the team. And Roethlisberger's going to have to throw more. So with Claypool, the bigger games are coming. And I think that right now there's a sense of, I don't even know if I can trust him in my lineup, and that's fair. But at the same time, when he starts getting 10, 12, even 15 targets a game, that's going to turn into numbers. So take advantage of this lull.
Yeah, it's always interesting to grab guys like, I guess we've talking about him even last week as being a buy low candidate on FanDuel, just because he is like that natural touchdown scorer. So like you're going to have swing weeks with this type of like archetype in general. So I think that he's a guy that makes a ton of sense. Obviously, Deontay Johnson getting 13 targets, but only coming down with 6 catches. So like the inefficiency, that's probably something that we're just going to have to live with Pittsburgh. I guess, how would you phrase, like, how do we like in good conscience, like attack pieces of this offense with what we have with Ben right now?
Well,
just
I think it's just
the update, I guess, what's coming up.
Yeah, exactly. It's you look at the matchups and you think, when he faces Lamar Jackson, when he faces Joe Burrow, when he faces Justin Herbert, when he faces Patrick Mahomes, they're not going to have the luxury of going conservative on offense. And we've seen him get very high in attempts already this year when it dictates it. And with Claypool, there'll be more downfield. Johnson, a little more efficiency. But either way, bigger days are coming for both.
Yeah, obviously we wish Calvin Ridley the best and everything he's going through on the personal side. And sounds like just the offense in Atlanta in general just might be a sell low at this point. Like we have CPAT, who maybe is a sell high because he's still been kind of getting there. But then Kyle Pitts, like, I don't know. The offense just hasn't looked good, Sig. And like they can have all the talent in the world. And without Ridley, I guess with Ridley's, I guess, like basically his future in jeopardy, we don't know when he's coming back, sort of thing. It's maybe just a situation to get away from. Is that what you're getting at here?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is one of those deals where in fantasy we are quick to say, well, who's going to get more targets, who's going to get more volume? And I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here as I'm making a volume-based argument for Steelers receivers. But this is a Falcons offense that didn't have a lot of advantages over opponents to begin with. Now you take away Calvin Ridley, and you really got a preview of it against the Panthers. Now the Panthers had Stephon Gilmore. Not everybody has a Stephon Gilmore, but Gilmore was able to basically take away Kyle Pitts. With Cordell Patterson, he was able to score, but you wonder if a touchdown's going to be hard to come by. The other thing is you're going to see the door shut really fast on this Atlanta offense in the next couple of weeks because they get New Orleans, Dallas, and New England. Ooh, that's tough. I mean,
tough stretch.
And you give a defensive coordinator like Bill Belichick, well, whatever, an emperor like Bill Belichick, those advantages, the structural advantages. So I think you're going to see Kyle Pitts get number 1 corners. I think you're just going to see Cordell Patterson. I mean, he may have some days where he catches 7 or 8 balls, counts for 100 total yards or more just on volume, because what else does this offense really have to hang their hat on? But the whole offense is going to underperform without Calvin Ridley. So there may be larger slices of that pie in terms of targets or opportunities for Pitts and Patterson, but the pie gets so much smaller that a bigger slice of a smaller pie will leave you hungry.
Yeah, sometimes you get these situations where you see the volume increase on paper and you get really excited about it, but you don't, I guess, properly get to the point where you realize what happens with this offense without Calvin Ridley.
Right.
Like if they're really struggling as it is, you remove like one of their top options. Like it in theory just leads to less touchdown opportunities as well. So it's
Exactly.
something that I think is interesting, and especially if like you can still get some name value for some of those guys because they did just recently have some very big performances. I definitely don't mind that whatsoever. So I can also see on the back end, everyone out there watching these videos, that a lot of you guys are not subscribed. So you're out there lurking. We do appreciate you for watching, but hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. Also, this podcast is on audio form in all major podcast platforms, so definitely check that out. The guy that we're going to talk about next, Sig, we're buying low on Darren Waller. I think that he's someone that we kind of forget about because he hasn't been on the main slate in a little while, it feels like. But yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts on him.
Well, the last we saw, he missed a game, right?
Right.
And bottoming out the disappointment after all the excitement when he had 19 targets in week 1, we were so excited to have him. And the thing is, everything with the Raiders is coming together. And you look at their schedule coming up, the Giants, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Dallas, Washington, another game with Kansas City. These are all games that prime this offense. And hopefully what's going to happen with this offense is we can have an amplification effect, right? How do you handle the running game, which should be better now with a healthier Jacobs and Drake? You have Henry Ruggs drawing the coverage deep. You have Darren Waller underneath. You have Darren Waller middle of the field, Hunter Renfrow underneath, Derek Carr distributing the ball, making good decisions, showing courage in the pocket. And everything starts to click. And even if opportunities are spread out more, they're higher efficiency, higher value opportunities. So I would expect that Waller at this point, and we're also trying to gauge that conventional wisdom or the temperature people have on Waller. And I think that he's almost a forgotten man at this point. So I think it's good to do that price check on him. And maybe even, again, this week, you're going to have the Giants coming up this week. Short week of rest. Mahomes is probably going to run. Mahomes and Kelsey are going to run them ragged. So it could be a bust-out week for the second half right away for Darren Waller.
Yeah, one thing that I think people like kind of fall into, and I'm guilty of this as well, is like that shiny new toy. So we got Kyle Pitts, where like now we don't care about Darren Waller, like the guy that's shown it, like and has had like done a lot with his volume for what feels like years at this point. And like what's interesting is you look into the data a little bit, and these guys, like we very rarely see tight ends pop and things like weighted opportunity because it does have to do with like these downfield targets. But we see these archetypes of guys that are being used like wide receivers, like the true number one weapon in an offense is just so valuable even for a team. I guess, I don't know, maybe I need to change my feelings a little bit on Derek Carr as well, because he's been doing the things I say I like. He's been pushing the ball down the field. So I'm curious your thoughts on like Derek Carr. He's looked great this year.
I think the whole Raiders team, Joe, I am toying with the idea that there's this sense without John Gruden there that the adults can just get to work. And he did assemble a good staff, and they have assembled a lot of talent. I mean, look, outside of rosters like the Texans and the Jets and the Lions, there's a lot of talent on all these rosters. Sometimes it's just coaching malpractice or organizational dysfunction that keeps that from showing on the field. And the last couple of weeks we've seen are about as good as we've seen the Raiders play in the John Gruden era, except it's not the John Gruden era anymore, right? So I think, again, you have all these plans like, wow, you have a team that has a running mentality on offense and two strong running backs, and you have a high, low, middle target depth with Derek Carr, who has command of this offense. Now you're giving defenses a lot of trouble when they have to answer the questions this offense can ask. And again, it could be, so we have offenses in fantasy football where we know that the cup's going to run us over. And maybe 1 week, like Buffalo is a good example. 1 week it's Cole Beasley. The next week it might be Emmanuel Sanders getting two touchdowns. When Dawson Knox comes back, he might get 2 touchdowns. But we know that all of those players carry a high ceiling week in, week out because of the efficiency of the offense. And I think the Raiders may be one of those offenses, especially with the schedule they have coming up. We just haven't seen it yet, so we don't believe it.
Yeah, the coaching stuff's real, Sig, and I always default back to like the example, because I know you're a hockey fan too, Sig, but when I was playing at St. Cloud, there was a Detroit Red Wings draft pick on our team. He's probably our best player, Nick Jensen. He's still playing in the league for Washington, but Babcock used to be at our practices all the time, and it was interesting because I was talking to him about his time in Detroit with Babcock, and as soon as Babcock moved on, it actually was kind of like a relief for some of these players, right? Because like And it's nothing to say that like the old school mentality of some of these coaches in any sport is something that's not as progressive as it should be. But for whatever reason, as soon as he was out the door, like Detroit, I mean, obviously they've regressed since then, but they kind of took a breath, and he said it was like a real like feeling in the locker room that he could sense that things were going to be a little bit different going forward with Babcock out the door. So definitely think that there's some at least some similarities to the Gruden situation. So everyone out there, I want you guys to pause this video before we move on, and I want you to let me know who's your top sell high candidate in week 9. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. The next guy we're going to talk about, Sig, I wasn't sure if it was Damian or Najee Harris, but we're buying high on one of them. Which is it?
No, that's a good one, actually. I mean, I think both Harris. I don't think you're going to get Najee Harris from any now.
Figured.
Najee Harris, if we're drafting today, is he the number 1 overall pick? I mean, him or Alvin Kamara, or I don't know.
Well, yeah. Now I guess we haven't even talked about Derrick Henry with that uncertainty, right? So like, who's the volume guy at running back? I guess we'll see if Christian McCaffrey comes back at full strength, but Najee gets getting peppered every single week. It's crazy.
Yeah, but I think that Harris is interesting. Although, like I said, I expect that the Steelers will go back to being a pass-heavy offense. But Damian Harris is interesting here because now you have this New England team. There's bottom out when they almost lost to the Texans. Should have lost to the Texans, and we thought of them as a bottom third of the NFL team. And this is just how it's going to go. But Mac Jones continues to improve at a very fast rate. And you can see this classic Belichick team, right? You reflect back on some of the early Tom Brady teams where sometimes, and they were doing this for a while last year too, or 2 years ago. Sometimes it's the defense, sometimes it's special teams, sometimes it's a few plays that they have in the back of the playbook they roll out for just that week. But they always find a way to put in a team effort, and it all converges with the running game. So Damian Harris is the one constant. And this team is now 4-4. And you look ahead at their schedule, Carolina, Cleveland, Atlanta, now this weekend Tennessee team. Joe, here's the tough part of their schedule: Buffalo, Indianapolis, and Buffalo. And it's a Buffalo team that they know very well. And then you have Jacksonville and Miami to close things up. So Jacksonville week 17, if that's an important week on your fantasy schedule. I think Damian Harris, remember, they've used him sparingly over the last couple of years. I think he's ready for this kind of workload. I think he's ready to be the point of the spear for this offense. And I would expect that I think he's a running back 1 for fantasy football in our midst. We just don't see him that way because we're not adding in the idea that when the Patriots are in their comfort zone, they're giving him 20 or 25 carries a game.
Yeah, I've heard you mention it a couple times now, Sig, and it's probably something that I need to start doing a little bit sooner than I have been. Now that we know kind of what these defenses are, it gets to the point of the season where we can lean a little bit more into these matchups. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, and I think in the case of Harris, all we need to see is that we expect the Patriots to be favored, or at the very least not fall behind by more than a score. Because as long as that happens, he's going to continue to get his. And again, the defense, special teams, otherwise setting up the team with good field position, shortened fields. Last week against the Chargers, okay, Nick Folk kicked 4 field goals, but we know that those field goals turn into touchdowns against teams like Atlanta.
Another player that we're potentially buying high on is Eli Mitchell. And Sig, he's someone that I definitely didn't have enough of on FanDuel last week, so definitely licking my wounds a little bit from that perspective. He's not someone that's using the passing game a ton, but there's definitely a lot of reasons to be bullish on Eli Mitchell, right?
I think he's another one that just the conventional wisdom hasn't caught up yet to what he is. And one of the things I wanted to say resoundingly was folks that emptied their wallet for him in week 1 waivers were right. They were right. Because what do you have? If it's week 8 and he's still the lead back for the team, that's all you could have asked for. But he's not just still the lead back for the team. He is crushing against a tough run defense like Chicago. And we know this running game can get it done. And now Jimmy Garoppolo seeming to find the eye of the tiger for himself and start to punch his way out of the corner in terms of his career arc. Now you have a really interesting proposition here where Brandon Ayuk is doing better. He's a potential buy low too after his increased involvement. And again, Garoppolo really reasserting himself as the leader of this offense at quarterback. Now this offense can be one that starts to create additional value, surplus efficiency, whether it be in the running game or the passing game. And let's not forget, George Kittle's coming back.
Right.
How does that change this offense?
That'll be great for the best ball shares, Sig. I got tons of Kittle that's just sitting there, and it's not a good time.
Man, dormant. Mount Kittle needs to erupt. But he's a key to this offense. So whatever this offense has been doing without Kittle, now imagine when Kittle comes back.
He's key to the run game as well, right? Like one of the better
Right.
blockers in the league too.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So everything's looking up for San Francisco, and I just think that there's still this skepticism because Mitchell he had a low efficiency game, then he got hurt, and then San Francisco seemed to have some static and dysfunction around how things were going. But I think that win against Chicago really got things aligned for them. Now we're going to see them against Arizona with the potentially gimpy Kyler Murray. It could
Mm.
be some momentum here building for this team.
Yeah, the Cardinals struggle with the 49ers. Like, it's just one of those things. Everyone's got like that one
Yeah.
division opponent that always seems to have their number. And for whatever reason, it does seem to be the 49ers with my Cardinals. So very interesting. I will say this, like I see in the comments a lot, Sig, people ask, like we talk about some of these players, is there a guy that stands out like in the range of an Eli Mitchell that you would consider moving for him? Or is it one of those guys that you try and get in like a throw in of a bigger deal? I guess, how would you approach that,
Yeah.
I guess, tactically?
No, I'm racking my brain right now to think about
Mhm.
this because I think that I'm looking down the rankings. The problem is that running. I mean, maybe you'd want to trade a successful player to another position.
Well,
This
let's
is
just
tough.
say this: if you
No,
can
no.
upgrade maybe like, or maybe you downgrade like one of your higher end
Well,
wide
here,
receivers to a tier
I got it.
down, would
I
you
got it.
want to
I
throw
got it
in?
for you.
Yeah.
I got it for you. So
Mhm.
you want to be putting together a package for Elijah Mitchell,
Okay.
and you want to do something like, hey, I'll give you Daryl Williams plus, or I'll
Okay.
give you Khalil Herbert plus, or I'll give you you know Boston Scott plus. You want to be able to maybe you could take advantage of someone with AJ Dillon coming off of a decent week that looks like now it's a 50-50 committee. It's not. It's Arizona. Everyone's going to try. And then the reason, like Elijah Mitchell, by the way, against Arizona, the one thing you want to do is keep running the ball on Arizona. So I think those are some guys that you might look at. Cordero Patterson. I would probably do Cordero Patterson straight up for Elijah Mitchell right now. I think that's another one. Another potential angle that folks could explore here if they've been sitting on Christian McCaffrey. I'm not saying you would even remotely do something like Christian McCaffrey for Elijah Mitchell straight up, but again, you could do a package for Elijah Mitchell and a number one receiver or something like that for Christian McCaffrey. And Mitchell, if he stays healthy, because look, Jeff Wilson is still weeks away from returning. And if Elijah Mitchell keeps running like this, then I don't think he's going to give any part of this job back. I think Wilson still has a role in this offense, but for fantasy, Mitchell has arrived. I just think that folks haven't realized it yet.